A very good day to you. I hope you had yourself an amazing Friday. It's yet another beautiful day where we are here on the Black Hot Fire updates to look at each and everything that was making headlines in Africa today, and especially Kenya, where we really had a lot going on today to do with our president and, of course, the demonstrations that have been happening. And a lot was actually happening. So I'm going to be telling you about that, including how a massive budget cut is going to happen across government that is meant to save billions of money. I'm going to be telling you about some of the cuts that the president has been forced to take. The cuts are going to save the government 177 billion. And now a setback again, where the government had said that it is going to borrow a total of 1 trillion Kenya shillings, but it has now said that it is only going to borrow an additional 169 billion to offset the 346 billion finance bill setback. So I'm going to be breaking down those numbers to you, don't worry, and also be telling you about the other cuts that were made throughout the government, including a mass firing that is about to happen. About 50% of government advisors are about to get fired, about slashing down on unessential travel and other things that the president talked about today in a bid to woo. It's a wooing campaign happening. He's just trying to woo the youths not to go back into the streets. And after the press briefing, he went into a Twitter space, an X space, for about 3 hours, answering questions and getting battered left, right, and center. And it was an amazing thing to watch, especially made me appreciate how much our democracy has grown. As I said, it is not yet there, but some of the things that we do in Kenya, things that other countries like Rwanda and Uganda can only dream of. So I'm going to be sharing a video of the press briefing and also a little bit of the X space so that you can see what was happening. And apart from that, we are also going to be looking at other parts of Africa today. We've been focusing on Kenya for too much. We're going to be looking at Mali. There was a wedding attack that killed about 21 people. I'm going to be telling you about that. And another attack also in a Chinese I almost said a Chinese mine, but it's the same thing. A Congolese mine and a Chinese mine are synonyms because the Chinese people are the one exploiting the mines in Congo. So there was an attack on a Congolese gold mine that killed 6 Chinese miners and 2 Congolese soldiers. I'm going to be telling you about that. And of course, any other thing that was making the headlines today. But let's start with Kenya, where I was telling you about the budget cut. So this was the president talking earlier today.
Fellow Kenyans, the last 2 weeks have been a difficult time for us as a country, where Kenyans have regrettably lost lives. Many have been injured.
And for the first time since he ever started having speeches, this was the first time that he started a speech with him apologizing, with him sending condolences to the people. Looks like the young people have really humbled him to a point that he has even done a budget cut on his wife. His wife was getting 600 million. That is the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya. That is a budget cut even on his wife, a budget cut on his deputy's wife, a budget cut on the Prime CSS wife, a budget cut on non-essential travel. So looks like the youths really did push him to a corner, and there are rumors that there might be some cabinet reshuffle still, apart from the one that he confirmed that effective immediately, 50% of the employees, that is the advisors, are going to get fired. And in addition to that, renovations that were set to happen, including an 800 million, if I'm not wrong, renovation to the deputy president's residence. There's an ongoing renovation in State House. There were renovations everywhere, so that one will be cut by 50% also. Additionally, civil servants who reach the age of 70 will now be required to retire immediately with no extension. We had civil servants as old as 80 who had their working term extended, so that is not going to happen anymore. So he did announce a lot of austerity measures that are meant to, including that of banning civil servants from ever attending Harambes. So one thing that I can assure you is that the demos, because I'm not sure they're going to continue anymore, they might, because a large section of Kenyans are not yet are content with the changes and they don't feel like the president is getting it still, they still feel like he's just talk. So the protest might go on, but of course, a smaller section of the country feel like he's now doing the right thing. So it's all a matter of opinion. It's all a matter of how you look at it. So far, the protests have helped achieve a lot of things, including one, doing away with the finance bill, which had a lot of controversial clauses into it, such as the land clause that was to see the Land Act that was to see people, instead of paying land rates, leasing their own land, a lot of taxations on vehicles, taxation on essential household goods. So that one was done with. So us standing up, even though a lot of people are lost, 39 to be specific, 25 according to the president, he's not aware of 14, but the official numbers are 39. Though we lost a lot of lives, we did achieve something. Not just for us, but for the whole of Africa, because Nigerians will be out in the streets. Nigerians are the last one to announce that they'll be out in the streets later this month. Ghanaians were out in the streets, but unfortunately, only about 3 of them came out, and they were really mad at the other youths for not coming out. So we have really achieved a milestone, not yet there, but it's a good step into the right direction, because from now going henceforth, leaders used to think opulence. They would come to public occasions donning 400,000 Kenya shillings, bells, contribute cash in bags. That one has been banned. It's not going to be allowed anymore. Politicians used to steal from us and then go lie to our parents in churches. That one has been banned. They will not be allowed on the podium anymore to politicize anything. So that actually shows how when you are united and the power belongs to the people, even as Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution says that all the power belongs to the people. On that one, they never got it wrong. And it is a good message, a good lesson for the rest of Africa, that the power really does belongs with you, the people of Congo, even as you're getting exploited by the Chinese and by everybody. You are the richest country in the world, yet the poorest. Power belongs to you, to the people of Central African Republic, even as you have deposits and deposits of diamond, but you are among the poorest countries in the world. Power belongs to you, to the people of Gambia, even with the lowest IQ in the world. Power still belongs to you. So here was President Ruto today.
Property destroyed, and our institutions, especially constitutional institutions, attacked. Once again, I extend my deepest condolences to those who unfortunately lost their lives. One life, as we all know, lost is a life too many. To the mothers, fathers, siblings, relatives, and friends of those who lost their lives, my deepest sympathies and condolences to you all. Equally, to the many others who are injured and recuperating, I wish them quick recovery. The government of Kenya will support all those who've lost their lives and those who've been injured. Despite all this, as a nation, we are finally discussing issues. We are not discussing tribes, personalities, or political formations, but rather we are discussing issues that affect each and every one of us. Issues of taxation, debt, budget, corruption, the cost of living, and opportunities for all Kenyans, especially our young people. If you go back on my Twitter account, I made a commitment to the country in 2019, 2020, that the conversation in Kenya is going to change. It is not going to be about personalities. It is not going to be about positions. It is not going to be about tribes. It is going to be about issues. Today, that situation is true, that we are having a conversation about issues in our country. We must all be proud of ourselves that we have managed to elevate the debate in our country to the level of issues that affect all of us. I am very happy that we are having a conversation about jobs for our young people, about opportunities for business, about manufacturing, about taxation, about debt, and all the other things that are important to all of us. I make this statement to highlight the actions taken in response to the overwhelming public feedback in the recent days, and to fulfill my commitment to continuously and effectively listen to the people of Kenya, and to underscore my intention to always take public contributions in good faith, applying them to enrich policy making, governance, and government programs.
So he goes on to talk and talk and talk, but I wanted the part where he was talking about the measures that he had put into place, the budget cuts, because there were major budget cuts, and some of the budget cuts are what I've told you. One is that the money that was being allocated to the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya will be done with. She will no longer be paid by public funds. Apart from that, the spouse of the deputy president, the spouse of the CS will no longer be paid. Apart from that, there are so many other things that he did strike, and that led to a total of saving of 177 billion is the amount of money that is going to be saved. So that is still a less. They still are a less from the finance bill had. The finance bill was supposed to raise a certain amount of money, but because of it was supposed to raise 346 billion extra. So because it was removed, now the government had to either borrow 1 trillion Kenya shillings or do away with some of the non-essential things. Borrowing 1 trillion Kenya shillings would have seen Kenya default on its loans, because there's no way we would have managed to pay that in addition to the 11 trillion debt that we already have. And another big achievement that we achieved from these demonstrations is that there is going to be the government also formed an independent task force that is going to carry a comprehensive audit of the country's public debt. In as much as the numbers might get cooked and they will not be accurate, it is the first time we've ever seen such a thing since independence. We've never had an audit of the country's public debt. We always take what they say as the public debt, and that is why nobody knows how much we owe. Some say 11 trillion, some say more, some say less. Some argue that we owe less than 11 trillion, that we have actually paid all our debts, and we now pay individuals because there is no available record on public debt. So if they say 12 trillion, we believe it's 12 trillion by the award. So some economists argue that our debt is actually less than 11 trillion and that we have actually paid all our debts. Now, some people use the public debt narrative to steal money from the public, because they'll say 800 billion was spent to pay debts, but in real sense, they only paid debt with 200 billion because that's what they owed. So 600 billion goes into the pockets of a few people. That's what one section of economists argue. Another section argues that the public debt is more than 11 trillion. That is why they never want to publicize it. They argue that there was a time the government claimed it had borrowed 3 trillion. It had a total debt of 3 trillion, but it had a total debt of 6 trillion. So they'll say they are borrowing 400 million, then they'll borrow 800. But in the record, they're saying they have borrowed 400. So we're going to know the truth. We're going to know whether is the debt position accurate, is it more, is it less? I don't know what you think. That is has always been a division, with some believing that we actually owe more than 11 trillion, another section believing that we actually owe less than 11 trillion, and the government is just trying to hide. Because if you look at the public debt, has always been mystified to a point that sometimes they'll borrow money with a non-disclosure clause. I don't know why a public debt would have an non-disclosure clause. If it has a non-disclosure clause, then it shouldn't be a public debt, because a public debt should be made public. So the task force will be required to provide a detailed report within the next 3 months. So according to him, in the next 3 months, and one of the people that were selected for that position is one of the most competent women we have in Kenya, the LSK president. Her name is Faith. She's one of the most competent women we have in Kenya. She was on the forefront of fighting abductions, especially when we were demonstrating and people were getting abducted. You get abducted, she would make sure she looks for you wherever you are. So she's going to be among those who are going to be auditing the public debt. I don't believe the numbers are going to be accurate. I'm pessimistic on this, but it's a step to the right direction. We've never heard this before. Public debt has always been mystified, and the fact that we are getting this nuance, 10 years ago, nobody cared about how much Kenya's public debt was. We did not have that nuance. That did not bother us. We were bothered by the next meal. We were bothered by theatrics, really, and non-essentials. But right now, the fact that the whole country is being bothered by the country's public debt position, well, that is amazing. It shows that we might not have won everything we wanted this time. We might have gotten 50% of all our demands, but it shows that going forward, the politics, not just in Kenya, but in Africa, are going to change, and people are getting more nuanced on issues, really, because the fact that the whole country is this bothered by its public debt position is something that I had not seen before. Nobody cared what the public debt position was. As long as I can pay my rent, as long as I can buy my food, the country's debt position is none of my business. That was the attitude that was there 5 years ago, and any Kenyan watching can testify this. But right now, everybody wants to know what is our debt position. Why are we borrowing 1 trillion Kenya shillings this year? That is almost more than half of our budget. Why do we have to have a budget as big as 4.2 trillion if we are borrowing 1 trillion? Why don't we cut down on the budget? And for the fact that we asked for some of those things to be done, and the government had to bow down, not that it wanted, but it had no other option. For example, to scrap off the CAS positions that were to see 50 political nominees being paid by government, by public funds. Those ones were scrapped. For the fact that we are now never going to see something like a confidential expenditure on a public office, that is a win in my book. Because what do you mean there is a confidential expenditure of 800 million on a public office? Unless it's a security institution, it doesn't make sense, and it should never happen. We should never have a confidential expenditure on a public office unless it's a security office, unless it's a national intelligence service, maybe the KDF, where we may not want to expose the type of artillery maybe we bought. But otherwise, any other public office should not have a confidential expenditure. Apart from that, the government has suspended buying of new motor vehicles for the next 1 year, apart from security agencies. That is a win, because we had, for example, the office of the deputy president having been allocated 200 million to buy new vehicles. So in Kenya, it operates like public officials are entitled to a new vehicle replaceable every 3 years. A new vehicle of their choice replaceable every 3 years. So at least this year they're not going to replace anything, because that one was also removed from the budget. There's not going to be any vehicle bought for the next 1 year. Apart from that, renovations on State House, renovations on the Deputy President's residence, there were renovations everywhere, renovations at Harambee House. Those ones will be cut by 50%. And they were costing a lot of money. I think State House was costing a billion. I think the deputy president's residence was costing about 600 million. So that one is getting cut by 50%. Non-essential travel has been cut. It will no longer, any travel will have to be essential. Of course, they are still going to travel with now the excuse of essential, but now they know we are watching them and it's not going to be business as usual. This even comes after we had a governor from Meru whose foreign travel amounted to shillings 900 million. That is closer to a billion. Spending a billion as a governor on foreign travel is nasty business. In 2 years, spending a billion on foreign travel as a governor in 2 years is nasty business. That was in Meru. So apart from that, the number of advisors, which are not even supposed to be there, it's not a constitutional position, will be reduced by 50%. So that means if the president had 6 advisors, they're going to be 3 now. So that was why I said there's going to be a mass firing, including rumors that about 9 cabinet secretaries will be fired. That is according to the Daily Nation. Ted rumors that they might fire about 9 CS. So that is how much we've achieved. It's really amazing to see the things we've achieved because we've achieved quite a lot, not only for our country but for Africa. And Jiba Jaba is asking me, Jiba Jaba is with me. Shout out to Jiba Jaba. Thank you for joining me. He's asking, did you converse with Ruto on X today and ask him a question? No, I did not. But the questions that were asked were quite impressive because some claim it was scripted. Actually, the person who hosted that space is under fire by the citizens. Don't want to see him because they did not want to host him on Twitter. So he at first opened his space himself. Nobody then left that space and joined another one that had been opened by somebody else. That somebody else is under fire. But some of the questions asked were very valid, including that of public officials vomiting on the people. By vomiting on the people, I mean the extreme showing of opulence. They would, even at distance, at distance that at 30 minutes drive of a distance, they cannot drive those CS and those MPs. They take helicopters. Actually, they don't take helicopters, they own helicopters. Almost every top government official has a private helicopter. So they fly, they don the most expensive watches, they carry money in briefcases, and the arrogance really was too much in this government with the public servants, because they are our servants talking down onto us. But at least some of those things might change, will definitely change, because it's not just about digital activism. We've even seen MPs getting beaten up. We've seen public servants getting beaten up in public now for such things. We've seen their houses getting torched. We've seen their vehicles getting attacked. Actually, they used to have vehicles with sirens and flags, and when they're driving through traffic, you'd have to give them way. But now they don't even do that because they don't want anybody to know they're public servants. So they'll silently follow the traffic jam. So that's how far we've come. That's how far we've come. And as I was saying today, it also made me realize how democratically matured we are. Not yet there, not closer there, not closer to where we should be, but in comparison to other African countries, we are actually somewhere up there in terms of freedom of speech and the rest. Because for a country like Rwanda, where I'm aware there's a general election coming up and the president is kidnapping whoever is competing against him. For a country like Uganda, where you cannot question Museveni. For a country like Tanzania, where a man was arrested last week for burning a picture of Samia Suluhu. Just burning a picture of the president gets you arrested. Here we burn the picture and tell him to fuck off. And as much as the kidnappings are still there, the arrests are still there, the intimidation is still there, it's significantly lower as compared to many other African countries. And that is something that they can borrow from and understand that power belongs to the people. And no matter how many people Museveni arrests, he cannot arrest the whole of Uganda. He cannot shoot the whole of Uganda. He might arrest Maria, but Setu will come up. He arrests Setu, then somebody else will come up. So I was actually appreciative of the level of the maturity that we have as a democracy, because I would advise you to go and rewatch, for example, the round table that the president had on Sunday with some members of the press. The questions were actually valid questions. Those people pushed him to the wall. He would try to lie and they would pull up old videos of him lying. Actually became personal at the end, where he was even asking them if he should keep quiet and let them answer, because they were not taking any bullshit from him. The same as on X today, people are, one man told him that we elected you because we thought a thief will catch thieves. And I was laughing to the ground when that man was telling him, we only elected you because you are a thief, and a thief is the one who's we thought would catch other thieves. So the freedom of speech is not yet there, but we might get there. Njiba Zaba says you've lost it when you kidnap opponents. That is what is happening in Rwanda. Not just kidnappings. I'm aware there was a woman who was murdered, if I'm not wrong, who was supposed to contest against. That is the intimidation, the politics of intimidation, where, you know, there was a journalist who was murdered in Sudan because he was recording. He was a cameraman, and accidentally the president soiled himself, and he did not cut. He forgot to cut away fast enough, and that was seen on national television. And so for that, he disappeared and has never been seen for just delaying the cuts. He was supposed to cut away fast when he noticed the president was soiling himself. So the fact that we are moving away from those type of intimidatory governments that we saw in the 90s, and you know, a victory for one African country is always a victory for many others. That is why you saw when one country in the Sahel liberated itself, two more followed. It's the domino effect. Keith talks about the 100th monkey test. So once you see one country in Africa starting to get it, starting to head towards the right direction, then that means it's only a matter of time before other African countries also join the train. So when I see our democracy, for example, maturing, for a fact that everybody who was arrested, kidnapped, abducted during the demonstrations has been released, as of my knowledge, I might not be 100% factual, but all the ones that I know are, you know, in as much as they try to abduct, but there's the Law Society of Kenya on their neck, there's people on their neck, and they can't even kill people anymore. Even if they abduct you, all they can do is beat you up, then release you, because they know if they kill you, the nation is going to stop, the country is going to go up in flames. You know, the fact that we are demanding accountability this much. We were used to. I shared a video of that Ugandan who was wondering. He was wondering how Kenyans are protesting for a politician lying to them, and he was asking, what is politics to you guys? Is in politics supposed to be lies? And the fact that I have seen leaders lie to us over and over again, I've seen Uhuru lie to us countless times, and nobody held him accountable. And for the fact that I have started seeing leaders getting held to accountability, you told us you're going to do this, why haven't you done it? You are a liar. You know, you said you're going to do this, why haven't you done it? So that accountability, if it continues like that, and it's not just happening in Kenya, you saw that in Nigeria the other day when there was the inflation was too high and the taxes were too high and the wages were not going up, and the people went out in the streets and they shut down everything. And the government had to increase their wages. I don't know if that really did materialize physically or it was just on paper, but I understand the government did raise their wages. And we see people in Senegal, Macky Sall, saying that I'm postponing the elections up to until December, and the people saying, you're not postponing no elections, brother, your time is up, you should go. And him having to do that, when we see people in, you know, all over Africa starting to hold leaders accountable, when we see people in Mauritania asking how come the same racist president who's advocating for slavery stole the elections again, and they are now asking for accountability from the in the electoral body, when you see, those small, when you see people in Burkina Faso burning down embassies, when you see people in Congo burning down embassies, that aspect of accountability has always not been there, and that is why politicians always knew I can lie as much as I want, I can give as many promises as I can. Nobody's gonna ask me what happened to the promises you gave us last year. Nobody's gonna ask me. But now, for the fact that they know that whatever you say now, it's gonna be you're gonna be held accountable to it, then that brings fear. You saw they added the salaries of MPs the other day, and the MPs refused. They said, "You are adding us salaries. Where do you want us to work? They're going to beat us up in the streets," and they refused the salary increases. So it's a major step to the right direction, and I'm happy today that our demonstrations, even though we lost a lot of lives, were able to achieve so much, not just for Kenya but for Africa. Whether they continue, we're going to see next week, because a large section of the country is still not impressed. They still think Ruto is all talk and no action. But you're gonna see what is going to happen. And Ikan Fire is with me. A big shout out to him. And he says, Africans need video and post everything for their liberation. The internet is our liberator today, invented by Nigerian. And Jiba Jaba says, peeing Salva Kiir, I recall that the journalist who was late, did not cut away fast enough for that, was murdered. He disappeared. That was how much the leaders, we treated them like gods. We do not anymore. Today, if in that Twitter space, nobody was even calling the president Your Excellency. They were calling him by his name. Njiba Jaba say, you haven't seen Kamlesh lately. Did he get grabbed? He was here on Wednesday. He was not here yesterday, but I'm sure he's gonna be back next week. He's safe. They can't grab Kamlesh, really. He's a menace by himself. They would release him by the following day. And Deacon Fire says censorship is what fueled the invasion of Africa and colonization, North Africa and transatlantic trade. So we need to post everything for the world to see. And I do agree with you, Deacon Fire, because the internet, in as much as they have always said that digital activism never works, if you look at it, digital activism is what is translating to all the changes that we are seeing right now. Because the internet is one place that, in as much as they might try to censor, they do not have the capability to censor everyone at the same time. So they might control the mainstream media, they might control what the mainstream media says, but the people are going to say the truth on the social pages. For example, it doesn't matter the narrative you try to drive, somebody somewhere with a smartphone will record a video and post, and we are going to see the truth. So Ikan Fire is actually 100% correct when he says we need to post everything for the world to see. We need to document everything. We need to document your lies. We need to document, because, for example, today on Ruto's X space, there were 4.2 million people. The total number of listeners was 4.2 million. 4.2 million people are listening to him talk. 4.2 million people are going to hold him accountable. In the past, apart from what the mainstream media would report, the media really has a big role in all the revolutions, because, as they say, the media is not just, there's a theory called the magic bullet theory that says the media is not just a tool to pass information. The media sparks emotions with how the toning of the message they send, with how they report on issues, with what they give priority to. For example, in the US, if the media was to start driving the narrative that a certain presidential candidate is not fit for office, for example, he's corrupt, it might not get everybody, but a certain proportion of the population will be bought by the same. So the fact that the main reason why I guess the mind control and the playbook has worked for long enough was that the social media was never really there. I like calling it the freer media. So when you control the mainstream media, then you control people's emotion, because the toning of a message is what matters. The government will steal money, but how the media will tone the delivery of the news is what is going to determine whether people will be angry or not. And I give a very good example of when we found out that Uhuru had offshore accounts in the Pandora Papers. The Kenyan media, instead of telling the people how Uhuru had stolen money from Kenya and hidden it abroad, did a whole feature story on why it is important to open offshore accounts, talking about it is safer, it is easier to transact. And so the public was not mad because they thought, oh, Uhuru is a very wise man for the fact that he opened offshore accounts. So the media does not just pass information, but it also controls. It's as Keith is saying, it's a mind, it's mind control. It determines how people view things. It changes opinion. It the media is a very, very powerful tool. That is why it is called it's called the for the state of power. That is why in the 1982 Kenyan coup, the first place they went to was KBC, the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. They know how powerful it is. And so the playbook, I think, is not working anymore because now it's not possible to control the whole freer media. It's too wide of a scope. I mean, I might talk here and they ban my YouTube, but even as they ban it, I've already passed the message. Somebody might come here, talk about things that they don't want them talking about. They're going to ban the live, but the message is already passed and somebody probably recorded it. And now the person who recorded it has posted it on TikTok. So censorship is getting harder and harder because people are getting more and more nuanced and the media is getting freer and freer. Really, the censorship is still there, but you can't come hold a gun on my head and tell me what to say the way you would do to a mainstream media editor. You're going to call a mainstream media editor and tell them, don't you dare air that story, and they will not. I'm going to air the story. You might ban the live, but the message is home. People saw it. People heard me. So they might cancel you, but at the end of the day, it's harder for them to control. Therefore, the state is falling and falling badly. They will try to sugarcoat a certain person, but somebody somewhere saw something and recorded and posted it. So we're still gonna know. Even the Sudanese journalist with the president who soiled himself, even if the journalist had cut away, somebody somewhere had a phone, he would have recorded and posted it. So I guess that is why I keep saying they need to revise, they need to rewrite their playbook. It's not gonna last for long. And there's a book that I'm reading. It's called The Leaderless Revolution, that talks about how leaderless people are going to change systems in the 21st century. I think I'm going to share the book on the group chat. And part of the reason that is happening is because it's getting harder and harder to control the narrative. Harder and harder to control the narrative. The mainstream media tries to tell people COVID is real, go get vaccinated. Somebody somewhere just comes out of TikTok and tells people, you know what, the COVID vaccination is part of eugenics. You don't get vaccinated, you're going to die. The mainstream tries to rebuttal it. Somebody else comes up on X and says, don't you dare get vaccinated. These people are liars. A certain scientist from, I don't know, Mexico comes up and supports the same. Another scientist supports the same. And now the mainstream media loses credibility. So, and Keith is saying that's why you are on the network for full control of the narrative. Exactly. And even if they try to censor, they try to they ban your account, you create another one, and the message goes on. And there are places that they are, even though it's freer media, it's not as free as it should be, but it's a step towards the right direction. You know, it's not like we're going to do away with their playbook in a year, in 2 years, in 10 years. It's gradual and it's the right direction. The fact that now more than half of Kenya knows about the IMF, even though the mainstream media keeps saying that the IMF, the World Bank does not control Africa's economy, the Kenyan president does, I don't know, the Ministry of Finance does, the Treasury does. Somebody else comes out of you TikTok and tells Kenyans the truth, tells them you do not even make your own laws, you do not make your own financial statements, you do not make your own financial documents, the IMF does. Mainstream media cannot believe. That is why you saw even today the president himself could not address the nation from a mainstream media. He had to go to Twitter to address the nation from there. And he was able to address 4.2 million people in a country of 40 million people, including kids, 50 million people, including kids. That makes about, in a country where the registered voters were 7.5 million, where the president got 7.2 million votes, 4.2 million people are listening to him. So the shift is, I don't think they really thought the internet would become this liberating, because the internet has really become liberating. That's why I can sit down here in Nairobi ranting, and General Mosquito can listen to me from the UK, Jiba Jaba can listen to me from, Ikan Fire can listen to me from wherever he is, Keith can listen to me as he's enjoying his tea with milk. You know, the internet has become so liberating, and I love it, and I love it. And as we come to the end, job is coming up in a bit. That was almost everything that was happening in Africa today, apart from some murders that happened with in Mali. 21 people were killed in a wedding attack. There was an attack that happened in Mali. An armed group attacked a wedding ceremony in central Mali and killed 21 people, most of them being residents, being just civilians, not armed people. So they rode into motorcycles to a village called Jigombombo in the town of Badiangara and killed 21 people. In DRC, a similar attack happened, only that this one killed 6 Chinese miners and 2 Congolese soldiers. So I'll be here tomorrow on the Diary of a Young Black King from 12:30. And I'm gonna be talking about how leaderless revolutions are going to change systems in the 21st century. I'm gonna be referring to that book on the leaderless revolutions, how leaderless revolutions are going to change how everything runs the 21st century. So hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoy your tea and milk, Keith and Jiba Jaba and Ikan Fire and General Mosquito, and of course everybody else was with me. It's always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen.